Okay, we'll give it a try. As I told my students this morning in OChem, if I don't suffer a major coughing fit, we'll be in good shape uh, after a severe cold swept through the house this week. But thanks for having me. I guess I decided to take a little bit of a different tact in terms of my talk. So I'm from the University of San Diego, right down the road. Just to give a little, I don't know if Ray Anderson, who's a colleague of mine in biophysics, gave a little introduction, but not to spend too long on this. But we're about 8,900 total students, 5,700 undergraduates. We offer chemistry and biochemistry, and we're graduating 30 to 40 chemistry and biochemistry majors a year. And so we're 14 tenure track faculty. I think one of the things that stands out about our department is we have a very intense research culture at the department. So all students have to do research, and we have a lot of nice awards in the department, including very generous support from Research Corporation. So thank you very much for supporting not only our faculty, but also our students. So this is my timeline. Getting old now. I was putting this together and reflecting on certain things, but one of the things I wanted to just kind of point out is I started my academic position after a postdoc at Scripps Research Institute down the road, and started in 2002. 2003, I put my first proposal together for Research Corporation, and I think it was my first grant ever that I ever wrote. And I just pulled it out of the old file cabinet. And back then, Ray Kelman was the program officer, but we were working on a lot of small molecule molecular recognition, trying to do very simple architectures for hydrogen bonding motifs. And one of the things kind of stood out to me, and I hope it's a theme of this talk, you could kind of see it down at the bottom, but this proposal was rejected. And one of the things that I really liked was Ray wrote a really nice personal note to me and said, get reviewers' comments and rewrite. So I took that to heart. And the next year, this was a different time at Research Corporation when you could actually submit the proposal multiple times. And so the next year in 2004, I submitted again. And luckily that was funded, and it was an entirely different field or purpose. And we had done a lot of organoboron chemistry in my career. And the sort of theme of this proposal was really that we could construct artificial light harvesting systems by a simple reaction, a condensation reaction of boronic acids to form this kind of tripodal structure. And then, so the incident light then we could gather and then emit with, some chromophore here. And it turned out that we published this paper, just the TET-LEP paper in 2005, which was a quick publication for us after starting. But this field really exploded at that time. So about 2005, Yagi published a paper in Science on covalent organic frameworks. A lot of people got involved in two-dimensional materials in terms of kind of thinking about metal organic frameworks, but in the context of covalent dynamic bonds. And so, of course, leaders in this field like Will Dichtel, Seth Cohen's kind of involved a little bit with metal organic frameworks, but also getting into softer materials with polymers. But, I have to say this was a really intriguing time. I got a lot of, career important talks that kind of set me for my next stage. And the support from Research Corporation was really critical in kind of catapulting this forward. So, one of the other sort of themes of this talk in terms of the support from Research Corporation has been the personal relationships that I think I've been able to establish with that funding agency and other funding agencies like NSF as well. But I think if there's one thing that stood out to me, that's really important is, relationships that you build over many years. And one of the things that after this got funded, after this got funded, Ray wrote me another note and said, this was really important because the funding from Research Corporation was supposed to be catalytic. Take this money and go forward and get larger pots of money. And I think Ray really said it well, you're close to publication. We encourage you to press on so that the goal is realized. And as a third, fourth year faculty member, this is really inspiring, right? To be able to take these results and then go to NSF and try to get the big money. And so I think that's really been huge in my career, the support from Research Corporation, how this money has led to other things along the way. So one other thing that I'd like to touch on is, so kind of, move through the ranks here, and then in 2008, something really special happened to our department, which was, we sort of had cultivated a relationship with Research Corporation. We had probably at the time 12 tenure track faculty. We were building capacity, a brand new building, but our research infrastructure was really not at the point where we could compete with the top level, primarily undergraduate institutions. And that's really where we wanted to go. We had set an expectation of ourselves to be one of the best departments in the country in terms of the way we mentor students, how we do research, and kind of cultivating those relationships. And so with Research Corporation, we partnered with them on a program that's called the Department Development Award. And just to give you a sense, this program was designed for systemic change. So that is, it funded things that we normally couldn't find money for. And so, Research Corporation contributed almost $500,000 over 2008. I think this extended to 2012, actually. Richard made many visits to guide us along this journey. Research Corporation overall, Sylvia and everyone at Research Corporation was so helpful in giving us not only just, hey, you're doing a good job, but also, you need to do better in these areas. And having that external voice to our administration and our department was just huge in really pushing us forward. So we also convinced the administration to kind of match this, if you will. And so this was really transformational for our department. It paid for things and got positions that we couldn't get otherwise. And along those lines, the other thing for me personally that was transformative was the opportunity to serve on the Cottrell Scholar Selection Committee. So this is a committee where we look at proposals that come in through the Cottrell program and evaluate those in the field. And just the ability to see the kind of science that's out there that's going on, to have that level view was inspiring, number one, but also really improved me as a scientist. So thank you for that. I really appreciate that. So as far as science goes, we took those early years in small molecule chemistry and kind of about the time I got tenure started to transition away from small molecules and into polymer chemistry. So you talk about, glycoscience as a neglected science at the undergraduate level, despite the fact that everyone uses polymers, a lot of chemists are employed in polymer chemistry, we don't really teach polymer chemistry at the undergraduate level. And so, at an undergraduate institution, what was attractive to me about polymer chemistry was, instead of getting a thin film on the flask after a week's worth, we could get a pile of stuff, right? That's attractive. And students find that really interesting. So my program is kind of divided in these areas. Mechanochemistry, I'll talk a little bit about this. We do a lot of work in polysaccharide chemistry, so adulterating biopolymers to make bioplastics and look at the organic chemistry of biopolymers. We have a big program in iodine-containing biomaterials. And lastly, I'll talk about this at the end, but I'm interested in the interface of undergraduate institutions, particularly, but academics and industry. So watch my time here. We got interested in this strange molecule, which is a terpene, farnesene, which you find in the skins of apples, different fruits. But a company called Amyris was kind of an interesting story in the biotechnology sector. They were one of the first people to convince yeast to spit out farnesene as a chemical product, right? And the idea was that we could use this maybe as a fuel feedstock and potentially as a chemical feedstock, sustainable chemical feedstock. And what I saw from this chemical when I look at it as an organic chemist is a nice synthetic handle to do what's called a Diels-Alder reaction. It's a particular reaction in organic chemistry that's a high-yielding reaction, generally doesn't involve a catalyst, and allows us to do some really nice transformations on this molecule. And so we started a large program in this farnesene area, and one of the things that came out of this was a recent publication we had in 2018 where we modified this small molecule in a certain way chemically and then sort of attached it to polysaccharides of various types. And we were able to make really nice films. The linkages that we established between the terpenes and the polysaccharides are all degradable. You get thermoplastic-like behavior if you increase the number of these terpenes that you attach to the polymer. And so it's a really, and some of the chemistry actually had some interesting aspects to the chemistry. But this work was all done by Brandon. He was a really talented undergraduate, a Beckman scholar, and also just this year started his PhD at Penn. So he's off to Philadelphia to do that. But this work really started a whole program in farnesene. So I think my lab is maybe the farnesene capital of the world. We have a couple jugs of farnesene that we buy from Amyris, and we're figuring out lots of interesting things to do with it. The other sort of really active area of my program, one that I'll talk a little bit about, is gene delivery. So the idea here is that we're making a large libraries of small molecules. Currently, the state of the art is viral delivery of genetic information, nucleic acids. Non-viral is dominated by the field of lipids. And so we're actually looking at small molecules and how small molecules could then deliver nucleic acid cargo using nanoparticles called polyplexes, which are kind of indiscriminate binding or nanoparticles of genetic information and cationic materials. And so with my undergraduate students, we're attempting to kind of go through this, what we're calling cycle of discovery, where we take these materials, look at some of their fundamental properties, form nanoparticles, and then look at transfection efficiency and go through this cycle again using that information to modify the structures a little bit and see if we can improve on that. One interesting thing is that we have a really strong collaboration with a local company that we're partnering with, and that sort of accelerates this process. Without that company, we would not be able to do this entire process ourselves, and so it's a really nice collaboration. But it does bring up some interesting questions that I'll pose to the group here, which is, this interface of maybe at a PhD level at a UC, I think, there's tried and true pathways in terms of interacting with industry. There's technology transfer offices, but at a primarily undergraduate institution, what does that interface look like? So I pose some questions here for you to maybe think about is, what are the desirable outcomes for undergraduates and students and faculty? It's always go into a collaboration with knowing what you hope to get out of it. So are the target outcomes different or the same versus a PhD granting institution? If you think of a lifetime of a PhD student, maybe 6 years, a student in my group might be there, if I'm lucky, 2 years with me. So if research needs to be vetted and sort of held a little bit before publication or going to give a poster at an early stage, what are the implications of that? That's something that needs to be managed and thought through carefully with undergraduate students. And then, timeline and how to manage intellectual property. So I think here, there's a machinery and a process to do intellectual property, but our institution, we don't have that. So in the absence of that, how do we handle intellectual property and what is the place of the student in that process? So these are some of the things we're considering. In my last slide, I just tried to distill down what I thought as reflecting back through the years and partnering with Research Corporation, came up with these kind of 4 bullet points, but Research Corporation has been and continues to be an important part of my professional life. And actually personal life too, because very good friends with a lot of the folks at Research Corporation, and I very much value that. So that's an important part is continuing to interact through follow-on funding opportunities, professional opportunities, going to Tucson, things like that. Early stage funding was sort of super important, and the community and personal relationships really are the heart of Research Corporation. And lastly, the idea that taking a program like Scilog or other programs that Research Corporation has and compounding the effect or the impact of those programs, I think is really one of the things you guys have done so well over the years and continue to do. So thanks for the opportunity to talk, and thank you for having me and all of the support over the years. I really appreciate it.